I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm really sorry to everyone I've hurt.
If this was an apology for stealing a loaf of bread, maybe, just maybe, I could believe it. But for what he did, not a chance. This man did not just commit murder. He shattered lives, invaded homes, and stole the safety people once felt in their own beds. His crimes were not just brutal. They were intimate, calculated, and dripping with pure evil. And then, as if his atrocities weren't enough, he sat in that courtroom, his voice trembling, pretending to be a man with a conscience. But he had no empathy, no soul, no remorse. The people of Blackwood didn't just see a criminal. They saw a predator, a ghost in the night who turned their city into his hunting ground. And no apology will ever be enough. DeAngelo Marquez was only sorry he got caught. Because sorry doesn't erase the trauma of a woman who wakes up screaming, remembering the shadowy figure that stood over her in the darkness. Sorry doesn't bring back a father who bled out on his own living room floor, watching a masked intruder walk away with his wife. Sorry doesn't do a damn thing. Before he was shackled in that courtroom, he was a phantom in the night. He was the Phantom King, a name whispered in fear, a legend built on blood and silence. His reign of terror stretched beyond murder. He was a master of break-ins, his burglaries eerily precise. No broken windows, no forced doors, just empty houses, ransacked yet untouched in a way that made your skin crawl. And worse, he wasn't just there for the valuables. Women would wake up with a presence in their room, silent, watching. Some found their drawers open, their underwear missing. Others awoke to a whisper in their ear, a blade pressed against their cheek. But for many, the nightmare went beyond that. He wasn't just a killer, he was a rapist. And the stories of those who survived him, they'll haunt you. Cynthia Hayes was asleep when she heard the sound of her baby crying. Groggy, she rolled over to check the monitor, only to see nothing but blackness. The camera had been unplugged. Her blood ran cold. Before she could move, a hand clamped over her mouth. A masked figure loomed over her, his grip strong, his breath steady. The knife against her throat didn't waver. "You make a sound," he whispered, "and I'll make sure the baby never cries again." What happened next? She doesn't talk about it, but she remembers the smell of his leather gloves. She remembers the sound of his voice, low, methodical, as if he were reading from a script. She remembers the way he walked out afterward, as if he had just finished a chore. Her baby was untouched. But she was never the same. Jessica Monroe was 23 when she came face to face with DeAngelo. She had just returned home from a night out, her laughter still lingering in the air. She didn't know he was already inside. He waited until she had locked the door, set down her purse, and turned off the lights. Then he grabbed her, a gloved hand around her mouth, the cold steel of a knife pressing into her ribs. She struggled. He didn't flinch, he whispered. "No one's coming." The next morning, she was found curled in her closet, shaking. She had survived. But survival didn't mean escape. "He didn't just hurt me," she said years later. "He stole who I was. He left something inside me, something dark, something I can never get rid of." And those are just the ones who lived. The McAllister family, an entire household erased in a single night. No forced entry, no alarms triggered. Just a dinner table frozen in time. 4 bodies seated, their faces carved into expressions of horror. A chessboard at the center, the king piece missing, and a note, written in ink that seemed to seep into the paper itself. Checkmate. Then there was Victor Hale, the wealthy investor found floating in his rooftop pool. His lungs weren't filled with water. No, he had been suffocated elsewhere and placed there, his hands bound with silk cords, a playing card stuffed in his mouth. The King of Hearts. I keep wondering about people like him. What goes on in their heads? What void is so deep inside them that they need to fill it with suffering? Do they feel anything when they watch the life drain from someone's eyes? Relief? Satisfaction? Or is it just another move on their endless, twisted chessboard? Detective Jonathan Elias Graves spent 5 years chasing DeAngelo. 5 years tracking a phantom. His obsession turned into something far more sinister. A game played in the shadows where each move left bodies in its wake. But he wasn't alone. Detective Paul Holman, methodical and relentless, was the one who saw the pattern first. Where Graves hunted on instinct, Holman dissected the evidence like a scientist, connecting the chessboard killings, the messages left behind, the playing cards that seemed to tell a story no one understood. Then, finally, a mistake. A single strand of hair. A taunt. A clue. The DNA led to one name, Louis DeAngelo Marquez. And here's where the story takes a sickening turn, because DeAngelo wasn't just some shadowy figure hiding in the darkness. He wasn't a nameless drifter or a street thug lurking in alleys. He was a cop, a man with a badge, a man sworn to protect the very people he was hunting. That's what gets me the most, the sheer, stomach-churning irony of it all. The idea that the person who was supposed to make the city safer was the one filling it with terror. The police were looking for a criminal. They never thought to look among their own ranks. It makes me sick. It makes me angry. Because how do you trust anyone after that? How do you walk into a police station and believe the man in uniform isn't just another DeAngelo hiding behind his badge? The hunt led them to the Queen's Club, an underground casino where secrets and blood money changed hands. It wasn't just a coincidence. Holman saw it first. The Queen of Spades, that's not just a signature, that's an invitation. They knew it was a trap, but they had no choice. Disguised as high rollers, they entered the club. The air was thick with cigar smoke and whispered bets. And then, they saw him. DeAngelo Marquez sat at the center table, dressed in a crisp black suit, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. His eyes met Graves across the room, a flicker of recognition, a silent challenge. Holman reached for his gun, but DeAngelo only raised a glass in a mock toast. Checkmate. They caught him. But some nightmares don't end just because the monster is in chains. The families he destroyed, they will never heal. The victims who lived, they will never escape the memories. And as Graves stood outside the courthouse, listening to the cries of the grieving, the whispers of those still afraid, he realized something. Some monsters don't stop playing the game, even after they've lost. And that's what terrifies me. The thought that for people like DeAngelo, the real thrill isn't in the kill. It's in the knowing. Knowing that even from behind bars, his name is still whispered. That his legacy of horror is still alive. That the fear he created will outlive him. It makes me wonder, how many more are out there, waiting? Watching? Planning their next move? Because if we've learned anything from men like him, it's that the game never really ends.